Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. The first time I met Lockey Maisonneuve, she was on a panel that I was moderating, and the panel was about strong women who inspire others by breaking stereotypes and creating their own path in life. And when I met Lockey and I learned about her story and I heard her talk about the work that she does, I was beyond inspired. Her memoir, A Girl Raised by Wolves, chronicles her heartbreaking, abusive childhood and her amazing resilience to survive, thrive, and dedicate her life to helping other people heal. Lockey, thank you so much for being here today. It's really such an honor to have this chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And as always, it is a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, Lockey. So I want to start with your book and kind of set the tone of our conversation today with your story. And you write in your book, A Girl Raised by Wolves, about your experience as a young girl. So let's start there. You were you raised in New Jersey, correct?
Mhm. Yes, I was
And
born. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no, go ahead. I was just gonna say you were here in New Jersey and you had like one of the most um, horrible childhoods I would say imaginable, some of the worst experiences. You were in New Jersey and your parents were separated, is that true?
hmm Yes. And when I was 5, my father sort of left for parts unknown. And for the next few years, I lived with my mother and my sister until my mother came home. I came home from school one day and my mother said, "You're going on a trip to go see your father." And I didn't know where he was, but I was very excited at the idea of going on an airplane because I had never been on one. And once we got on the airplane, my older sister, showed me the airline ticket, and it was a one way.
Hmm.
And that was when I found out that my mother had given us away to our estranged father. And
Did you know your
we,
father at all?
I knew him. Yeah, I mean, I knew him, but I also knew that my mother hated him and that she never had anything good to say about him. And I knew that he was an alcoholic. And I knew that my mother was an alcoholic because both of them, at a young age, I learned about alcohol very quickly. Um, so knowing that she was sending me to live with him, of course, I wondered what I had done wrong. And what my sister had told me was that she heard them talking on the phone and she heard my mother say, "I'm done. I've done this long enough. It's your turn." And she sent us to live with him. And soon after we moved in with our father, we realized this was much worse. He was an alcoholic. He couldn't really hold down a job, and uh, it just went from bad to worse. And while we were living with him, my father started selling me into sex trafficking, and the abuse started with just him, and then it was just friends of his, and then it was he would take me places and to be sex trafficked. Uh, what I'm very proud of is that I was the one who put a stop to it. I called my paternal aunt, my father's sister, and let them know that if they don't come and get me, that no one in that family would ever hear from me again. So they brought me back to New Jersey, where I let my entire family know that I would be living with my paternal grandparents and that I would not be living with either of my parents. Um, and I lived with my paternal grandparents until the end of high school.
And
Um,
so, Lucky, you were in high school when this was happening. What goes through a young girl's mind when she's dealing with something like this? What are you? How are you surviving? Did you know you were going to survive?
I always knew I was going to survive. I always knew from the time I was like from my earliest memories, I remember thinking, I do not belong to these people. I have no idea how I ended up with these people. And I had a whole story in my head that I was put up for adoption and that I had this other family that was just waiting to find me. Turns out that that never happened. But in my childhood way, that's what got me through this.
Yeah.
And when we left Florida, we drove back to New Jersey. And I remember I cried through Georgia, the entire state of Georgia. And I also remember, well, I don't remember physically doing this, but I blocked it all out. So when I was in high school, when I came back to New Jersey and I was going through high school, living with my grandparents, with whom I credit for saving my life, because they showed me love and they showed me a normal life that I had never experienced before. They showed me stability and they taught me structure, which is, what I needed from the beginning. And um,
Was that hard to
I just
accept?
walked,
Was that love and
excuse
structure hard?
me?
Was that love and structure hard to accept at that point, given everything you had been through? Was it hard to trust?
No, I still have a hard time accepting love and trust. I mean, no, it's not easy to accept. But I remember my grandfather one day, to the degree that he would have ever lost his temper with me, which was not much. I was talking about not feeling loved because I was talking to my grandmother about how I think I was asking her, like, why would my parents give me away to anybody, let alone just to anybody? Why would they do something like that? And my grandfather slammed his hand on the table and he said, it doesn't matter what happened before. What matters now is that you're loved.
Mm.
And I just accepted it and went, okay. And like, I just kind of accepted it. Um, uh, I never felt worthy of it, but I accepted it. And I always felt like a burden because, I was intruding on my grandparents' lives. And that was how I felt. Um, I did not talk to my mother for 24 years. And my grandmother did encourage me to reach out to my mother. And, we're an Irish family. And, it was a lot of, well, she is your mother, no matter what kind of mother she is. And I never subscribed to that because I just felt like if you don't want me, I don't want you. And, um, but I always knew I was worth more.
Yeah.
No matter what, I knew that I was worth more, and I knew I didn't deserve what happened to me, even though I took on the shame, I took on the resentment, I took on the anger. I still knew deep down inside that's not who I am. And I didn't know who I was, but I knew I wasn't that.
Did you have a
Um,
vision of who you wanted to be and what you wanted to do? Or were you still kind of in survival mode at that point?
I was in survival mode at that
Yeah.
point. It was when I became older, and started just sort of learning about life. I always felt like a fraud. Like I felt like I was cosplaying being an
Mm.
adult or cosplaying being a normal person. And I never talked to anybody about anything. And because I had blocked it all out, I didn't even know what it was I was cosplaying for. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. And then, to fast forward a little bit, um, you get a cancer diagnosis. Your
yeah.
mother is murdered.
Hmm.
Any one of these things is a lot and very heavy for someone to come through. How did you juggle all of this, and how many times did you say to yourself, why me? Why or did you say, why is this all happening to me?
Um, I say that again.
Why
What was it
did
you
you
were
did you say
asking me?
why me? Like why you must have thought why me at some point, all of these things happening.
Yes, it was weird because I felt like a survivor and I felt like a victim,
Mm.
and I was always sort of living in between those two things while I was trying to pretend that I was normal, but I didn't feel anything close to normal. And even, I was lucky enough to choose very well in my marriage.
Mhm.
And when I say choose very well, I mean the man that I chose to marry is quite literally the safest man I've ever met in my life. And I've always told him there's something about his voice that um, has always been soothing and comforting to me. And um, he's kind, and
Mhm.
he's just he is like my safe spot in the world, and he always has been. So we had children, we got married and we had children, and I remember sitting there when I had my son. He was my first child that I had. When I had my son, I would sing Janis Joplin songs to him because I didn't know any um, nursery rhymes. And um, I didn't tell people that because I was embarrassed. And I remember sitting, I started a mother's group, and I remember sitting at this mother's group, and all the moms were talking about the story of the Velveteen Rabbit. I'd never heard of it. And they were talking, this one mom was telling the story of having a rabbit that her somebody in her family had given to her, and it was she carried it throughout her life with her, like she went to college with it, and now it sits in her child's room. And I remember thinking, like, what must that be like to have something like that that goes with a story that someone read to you. And I thought, that's what I want for my kids. I want my kids to have their own version of the whatever our version of the Velveteen Rabbit was. So while I felt like a complete outsider, I also felt like it, instead of feeling less than, when I heard people tell stories like that, it sort of inspired me to go, how do I create that for my children? How do I create that? Like, that's what I want to create. And so, yes, I absolutely felt the why me, but that was internal. And what was external was, I don't want this life for my children. I
Lucky.
want my children. Yeah.
I've seen you as a mom. I know that you are an amazing mother, and so I think you've done very well in achieving that. I know you've also done a lot of healing work. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the healing work that you've done and how you are now helping others heal in some really amazing ways. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Lockey, you've done so much healing work, and one of the things that I am fascinated by is you sort of made yourself a little buffet. You took pieces that worked best from you from all different approaches. Talk to me about that and how you discovered that was the right combination for you.
Well, throughout my healing journey, excuse me, I was always told, you should do this and you should do that and you should heal this way. You don't do this, this won't work. And, I never felt like any of it produced that epiphany or that wild moment of healing, and I was always waiting for the thing that would fix me. And I thank God that I had I finally ran into an extremely straightforward and direct therapist who called me out on my stuff, and she helped me to finally see you can't heal on somebody else's terms, and you're not broken, so you actually don't need to be fixed. And through her guiding me through that, and you can trust and believe, I fought her 100% along the way, because I wanted everything to be everybody else's fault, because then I didn't have to take any accountability for how I was living my life. And I finally started looking at things like yoga. I love yoga. I became a certified yoga teacher. I, like to think I live a yogic, life. And there's a lot of things about yoga that were not working for me. And until I really started looking at the other side of yoga, meaning just the practice of yoga and what it actually does for you inside, that was when I started to realize maybe it's not about doing the handstand, which it's great to do a handstand if that's what you want to do, but there may be something deeper in that. And then I started looking at all of the other healing modalities that I was trying. And what I realized was there are certain aspects of every healing modality that I tried that really did work for me. But it was clouded with still looking for that specific aha moment, or how come she looks more healed than I do, and how come this works so much better. And then I realized we're all just doing our own thing, and we have no idea what a person really feels on the inside. And that was when I kind of frankly, I lightened up on myself, and I went, okay, if I were not broken, how would I relate to this? if I were not trying to fix some part of me that I feel like is um, just, I can't think of the word I'm looking for, but anyway, if there was some part of me that really really needed to be fixed, how would this apply? And
Mm.
I started to realize I actually don't need to be fixed. Like, I'm okay. And I have been through a lot. And I think it was acknowledging that everything that I had been through. And when I started telling my story to people, close friends at first and things like that, um, I realized that I started telling the story based on what I thought a person could handle hearing. And that made it even worse
Mm.
because some people didn't believe me because I was telling the story in such a weird way. Some people started treating me like I was a victim, and which I hated. And it was when I finally realized this is just my story. That's all it is. It's my story, and it's none of my business how people interpret it or what they do with it. It is quite literally none of my business. So when I stopped trying to tell the story for other people or to tell the story in a way that would be acceptable to other people, because how would I possibly know what's acceptable to
Right.
another human being if I don't ask them? I just started telling the story, and
And so then
that's
at,
what worked.
and so then at what point did you realize that you wanted to help other people heal?
Oh, so I went for my yoga certification, and when I got my yoga certification, part of completing that certification is you have to write a plan for what you want to do with yoga. And I wrote this plan that I still look back and laugh because I don't remember writing it. Um, I just when I look at it now, I sort of laugh because what I wrote is what I do for a living now.
Mm.
And what I had said in it is I'd never want anyone to feel like they have to be trapped in their story. And I want people to see that through yoga, the value of yoga to me is you can really connect with your body and understand that your feelings do show up in your body, and that awareness can help you to manage and learn to self-regulate, so that anxiety that you think you're stuck with that's never going to go away actually can just become a warning sign, because that's all anxiety is. It's a warning sign for your body. And instead of being trapped by it, you can actually just sort of learn to flow with it. And even coming onto this podcast, Ivy, I'm a huge fan of yours and I love working with you. I'm still nervous. I'm still having all those feelings in my body, but I just take a breath and remember it's just us talking. That that's it.
Well, and I'll just say
But I
also,
have the feeling.
but you're doing a great job, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this type of podcast is because I know how powerful it is when people share their
Yes.
stories, and I know that there is someone who is listening to you and seeing how you have come through to the other side and really dedicated your life to so much positivity and so much healing and creating just wonderful things in other people's lives that I hope
Mm-hmm.
that inspires. I know it will inspire someone else who's maybe in something. What do you say to that person who's going through the worst time of their life, whatever that may be, and how do you tell them you're going to be okay?
Well, in my day job, right?
Yeah.
So during the day, Monday through Friday, I am a substance abuse counselor at an inpatient facility in Monmouth County in New Jersey, and it's an all male facility. And when I meet people, they are literally at their rock bottom, and quite often they'll come in and tell me that they feel a lot of shame. Some will present as angry because, as we know, anger is just a secondary emotion, but 90% of the time what's behind the anger is shame, regret, remorse, some version of that, guilt. um, and the first thing that I tell people is that when they come into treatment, at least if they're coming across my office and I'm working with them, when I come into work every day, I make sure I have my lunch, right before I get out of the car. I make sure I have my keys, and I make sure that I leave all my judgments and all of my opinions in the back seat of the car. And that anything that they want is available to them here. Anything that they want in terms of their own healing, their own recovery, it is available to them in that facility. And it is it's sort of like a buffet, and you have the opportunity to step out of this mindset. But first you have to sort of learn how to dance with it.
And Lockey, you said you
And
work with all men, and I know that some people have even said to you that that maybe is a little strange given what you had been through in your life. Can you talk to me about that? Is it harder for you to work with all men?
not at all. And the one of the things that I'm most proud of is that for some reason, and I don't even know how it started. Well, I know how it started. It started because I said yes to a challenge. So when I was going through my own healing journey, I first started saying things like, I want people to know that they don't have to be stuck in this. They don't have to be trapped in their own story. And I want people to know that healing is possible.
Mm.
And through that, through networking, I started teaching yoga in the school systems in Newark through a group called the Newark Yoga Movement. And from there, I was invited to go and teach yoga in the jail in Newark, the one they call the Green Monster. And then from there, I was invited to go work in a psych ward at Trinitas Hospital in Elizabeth. And then from there, I was invited to go and work in Newark at a university hospital, where I worked with a group called the Newark Community Street Team, and we taught peaceful conflict resolution skills to gang members who were hurt on the streets.
Mm.
And when they came in to heal, we would work with them. Then I started doing teaching yoga in outpatient facilities. In all of that time, it was almost all with men.
Wow.
And what I loved was my husband always says, you don't see my wife coming. And quite often, the men that I worked with would look at me and go, what are you doing here?
Right.
Like, I think it just threw them off so much
Right.
that they just sort of would open up. And one of the best compliments I ever received was I worked in a facility in Newark, and I went up to one of the male colleagues that I worked with, and I said, so what's the word on the street about me? And he said, they're all afraid of you. All of the men in this building are afraid of you. And I went, why? And he goes, because you don't flinch. You don't seem like you're afraid of any of us.
And that's right.
And yeah,
That's true.
and I went, okay.
So, Lockey, I know that you also do healing retreats. We're kind of running out of time, but where can people get in touch with you to learn more about the healing retreats and the work that you do?
We offer these. I work in partnership with the Honor Yoga Foundation, and we offer these we offer fully scholarshiped healing retreats, and you can find more information about that on the Honor Yoga Foundation website, or you can come find me on Instagram at Lockey Maisonneuve, which it's all right there in my name, on Instagram.
Perfect. Lockey, we end each show with rapid fire, 3 big little questions. Are you ready for them? All right.
Sure.
How do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
Sometimes it's corny. I dance.
Perfect. What is your go-to karaoke song?
If I'm with my husband, Paradise by the Dashboard Lights.
Ooh, very good. And what's your favorite spot in New Jersey? One of your favorite spots in New Jersey?
Asbury Park.
I know.
Come
I
on,
knew you were
girl.
going to say that.
You know that.
Lockey,
Come on.
Of course. Lockey, thank you so much for being here today and just being such an inspiration. And I meant what I said from the moment I met you. You've stayed with me and just been such an inspiring figure. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ivy. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank
I'll talk to you soon. I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
You as well.
And that will do it for today's Big Little Stories. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Stories Show. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. I'll see you next time.